Show me an AI bot that's going to come up with that idea.
How are you trying to differentiate yourself and compete with ESPN and Sports Illustrated?
Multiple times where we've outranked like a Bleacher Report, ESPN, Sports Illustrated. They're probably foolish to think that Google's just going to keep that faucet on for every website forever.
I feel like it's like a doomsday scenario, right?
Most internet usage is based on search. You know, you've seen Hollywood push back against the use of AI. People have already lost trust in human beings in the news. So it's going to take a long time for the broader range of people in the US and in the world to adapt to this behavior. If you have a channel that can drive 80% of the results you're looking for, why are you only investing 5% of your resources into that? Search will always be around, in my opinion, in some capacity. It doesn't have to be Google. People are searching TikTok, people are searching Pinterest. Yeah, so after graduating from college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved to write, and so I started writing for a local Philly sports site that was kind of up and coming, and it was just all for free, obviously just a passion thing on the side for me. And over time, I started to realize like this is something I kind of want to like start my own thing and just start writing about what I want to write about rather than just tightly focused on like the latest Philly sports news. So started my own website. I was fortunate enough to have someone there to help me and kind of like that knew about the whole space. I didn't know anything going in, so it was a lot of research and figuring out how to create a website from scratch, and just started writing, publishing, and at first it was just family, friends that would just kind of give me like those pity reads, like just like trying to help me out a little bit. And it was like I didn't know how to build an audience at all. And in Google Analytics, I would be checking every single day. And it was mainly like just like looking at like the different channels in there and like how are people finding me, how many people are reading my stuff, how long are they staying on the website. And as I started learning, I started to see like this organic channel is coming in, and I was like, what does that mean? So I kind of went down the rabbit hole of SEO, organic search, how to tap into that as a growth channel, and kind of build an audience from zero.
So is SEO your like biggest growth channel right now, or is it something else?
It definitely is. Yeah. So if it didn't happen the way it did, like it just kind of like naturally happened where one of our articles kind of took off in Google. And if that never had happened, and it was like totally on accident, obviously at first, if that never happened, it probably would have been social or some other growth. I stumbled into organic search, and everyone was doing social media, and like I couldn't figure out how to really grow and leverage social. So organic is what I stumbled into, and I went down the rabbit hole, started taking online free courses, anything I could find about like how to drive more traffic to the site. And I got really curious, and I think that's the best way to learn, is just following your own curiosity and just kind of diving down and just figuring out what works, what doesn't, who's a trustworthy source, who isn't, and testing things out for yourself to see what really works and what doesn't. So that's how I got into SEO, and then I started just publishing articles that were optimized for search and that still blended with our brand of Underdog Stories in Sports. And today we're up to like 55,000 monthly page views. I would say 75% of that is still from organic search.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. So could you like break it down when you first realized that you wanted to go deeper into this, that this was a real growth channel, to actually getting 55,000 monthly, do you say monthly viewers, organic viewers, page views?
Yeah, monthly page views. Exactly.
Like break down break down the 0 to 1, and then we can go from like the 1 to 10 afterwards. But like how'd you get started there? What was the key driving factors to get it up and running once you realized it was a real viable path?
So my understanding has changed so much since starting this. So I probably didn't go about it in the best way, but it was mainly about, okay, I can get a free 7-day trial of SEMrush, which is a popular keyword research tool. And I was just thinking like, okay, what are people searching for, around Underdog Stories in Sports, anything that has to kind of do with that. So I stumbled upon like this men's fashion website that I read about in the past, and they were writing about like shortest players in the NBA and the MLB, and like it had to do with like men's fashion for like shorter guys. And I thought, I have the authority to compete on that because I'm all about sports. They're kind of about fashion. So maybe Google would rather rank me for this search. So I published, I think, shortest NBA players, I think was the first one I really like took a shot on. And then, I started to see like, okay, it's starting to pick up some traction on page one of Google for different search terms. So if people don't know, Google, like, it's not just about like that individual keyword, it's about like the whole topic itself. So Google is smart enough to understand if you say, if you optimize for shortest NBA players, if someone types in like who are the smallest players in basketball or pro basketball, that'll still come up for that search. So um, beyond just looking at there's 1,000 people searching for shortest NBA players, the real number of people that are searching for that topic is probably way like exponentially higher than what that little keyword will tell you. So that started to pick up traction, and then it was just about scaling. So hitting every league for the shortest players in that league, expanding into other content types, and then just, I had a few freelancers over that time. I went through a lot of different people that, wanted to contribute to the site and not always, sticking around. But now I'm fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 guys that are key contributors over, a steady basis. So it's just about like scaling that and just kind of, making sure that we're hitting all the points to tap into that search. But, you're probably hearing, if you're interested in SEO in 2024, you're probably hearing a lot about how Google is changing the algorithm. They're, prioritizing AI overviews, and we can get into all that stuff later. But search will always be around, in my opinion, in some capacity. It doesn't have to be Google. People are searching TikTok, people are searching Pinterest for whatever topics they have. Like, most internet usage is based on search. So someone's always out there searching for something. YouTube is now the second biggest search engine in the world, and it's owned by Google. So, so much potential out there still to be captured. And, the quality for content, like the bar is just only being raised in the world of AI content.
Because of these tools like, Google giving summaries. I don't know if you've seen like Perplexity doing like summaries of stuff. They give sources. I don't know how many people are actually like clicking on the sources. Maybe right now they are, right? But as more and more people get used to just using the AI based search, and it stops hallucinating and it starts giving like more and more accurate answers, which it will do over time, I guess it's a detriment to people that are actually creating real content from scratch, right? Like in terms of like sports content, I'll just go to Perplexity and then I'll just ask him like, the top 5 baseball players in this, the 90s or something, right? And it'll just give me the answer. It'll summarize from you. I'll never even hit your site. You won't get the conversion, right? Your conversion rate's going to plummet. Your page views is going to plummet too. So I feel like it's like a doomsday scenario, right?
It's something I'm definitely thinking about. It's something that hasn't impacted my metrics. My metrics have only improved, actually.
Okay, interesting.
But for the long term, yeah, like, we're focused on inspiring stories in sports. So we do one in-depth story of a specific individual that's, every single week, that goes out in our newsletter, and has nothing to do with organic search. So that's kind of like our brand play of like building a loyal audience that's going to keep coming back over time. The search traffic thing is mainly right now for me is trying to capture like a very small percentage of those people that will maybe return to the site in the future, subscribe to the newsletter, and at minimum drive revenue to the site through display ads, which are programmatically on the website through, I use Mediavine, but there's so many out there. So it's about driving revenue that I can reinvest into growing my owned audience. So that's how I'm thinking about it. But as a whole, like, the behavior of like using a chat bot, like, I used Perplexity this morning. It's because I work in SEO. We're kind of at the forefront in digital marketing. Like, we're kind of in like our bubble, like you and I, like, we see this on Twitter, we see it on YouTube, whatever we're following, we see those things, but it's very like, it's going to take a long time for the broader range of people in the US and in the world to adapt to this behavior. People have been searching since Google came out. Even before Google, people have been searching the web. So for that behavior to change, in my opinion, it's going to take a little bit longer than people think. But you're right that you do have to adapt and adjust to that future. So, no one is naive enough. And if they are, they're probably foolish to think that Google is just going to keep that faucet on for every website forever and nothing's going to decay. Even before all these major changes with AI, like, sites have gotten crushed because they were doing the wrong things or not prioritizing their audience. And content will naturally erode over time. So you'll have that like growth period, you'll have like a sustained growth, and then it'll kind of like, as that data gets more inaccurate or whatever you've written about becomes more irrelevant, if it's not totally evergreen or there's something that's better out there that comes along, it's going to decay over time no matter what. So it's just about prioritizing the person on the other side of the screen that's coming to your website.
Most of these tools are kind of bad at generating like content from scratch, right? Most of them right now, it's like pretty obvious to detect for a human that this is like AI generated, especially if it's like 100% AI generated. But that's going to change too. Like with the new models like Claude 3.5 Sonnet and like a bunch of, GPT-4o, they're pretty good. Like they're better than like even some other writers, like if you were to hire them, right? Obviously the creativity aspect is still there, right? Like that is really hard to replicate, but it's like pretty close to passable for a lot of people, right? For a lot of people, people will think, you know what, I can automate my entire system now because of this. So that also means there's going to be a lot more garbage into the universe. Does that like cross your mind? Like when you are creating newsletters, that anybody can sort of like create one now and anybody can go like write these things, and it's that much harder for you to stand out because everyone's just going to sort of assume that this is AI generated, even if it may or may not be, or maybe it's 20% generated.
So the growing trend has been over, probably forever, is that people follow people. Like people want to trust other human beings. And you're right that like as that AI generated content that's like say 80% there on a great day, or it becomes so advanced that it's like almost indistinguishable, people's trust, I think, is going to plummet. So I think they're going to go to the people that they trust and that they enjoy to like reading. I think that any shortcut that you come across in any type of digital marketing or, newsletters, publishing, even like writing books, people are writing like children's books with AI.
Yeah.
I think you're always going to need that human element because you're going to need your audience on the other side of the screen to trust what you have to say. So I don't think like if that scenario happens where AI is completely indistinguishable from human writers, then we're going to lose movies, we're going to lose TV shows that people watch, we're going to lose books, we're going to lose newspapers. Like everything that involves like writing will be gone completely in that doomsday world, which I don't see happening, just because like especially when you get into news and TV, how are people going to trust AI over human beings? And people have already lost trust in human beings in the news. So, it's getting difficult. And I think it's just, you've seen Hollywood push back against the use of AI. So I think it's going to get to a point where each industry has to determine how they want to move forward. But the way I'm approaching it is I want to build that one-to-one relationship, and email newsletters are to me a great way because it's very personal. I get replies. I just got a reply as we're talking here from a new subscriber introducing themselves, talking about, which story resonated most with them. So I think you really can't replicate that one-to-one relationship. And that's really what I'm trying to build with my newsletter.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's also owned audience that I guess like you have full control over. It's different than ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and other things, but they're also ruthless with their SEO strategy as well, I'm sure, right? And so, and they have a domain and, all these years of trusted authority. So I guess, yeah, like how are you navigating that as you're trying to stand out and like carve a niche for yourself? How are you trying to differentiate yourself and compete with ESPN and Sports Illustrated and all these other companies?
So it's going to sound counterintuitive, but I'm not trying to compete with them at all.
Okay.
Their brand is completely like news driven. Like people trust them already. Like they go to their site, they can obviously rank for whatever they want to. I'm trying to be like this little niche corner of the internet that's focused just on these inspiring stories. So like ESPN, growing up, I would watch SportsCenter. They would have that one like 5-minute segment of like an inspiring story. And that was my favorite part of the entire broadcast. To me, I want our website to be a home for just those stories. And it's just this little corner of the internet that people can seek out. They can go to ESPN, obviously, for everything broad to do with sports. They can go to Sports Illustrated, which has dabbled in their own AI, approach over the past few months, and they've gotten in some trouble with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm going after these search terms that are more, people will call them long tail in the industry of SEO, that people are searching for that kind of are related to these underdog stories. So like I mentioned, like shortest NBA players. I have another content series that I've done of like smallest market teams in each league, and just kind of going in depth of like how they've competed in the world of, you know, the massive landscape of these big market teams that have all this money to spend versus how do these little teams compete, like the Tampa Bay Rays in baseball, just continuously like outperforming expectations with, you know, smaller budgets and less resources than other teams over the years. So yeah, I mean, you won't see the ESPNs. I mean, there's cases where I have it on my resume actually. Like we have multiple times where we've outranked like a Bleacher Report, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, because we are more hitting on that exact intent of the search. So like ESPN might rank for like an article about Muggsy Bogues being like the shortest player ever in the NBA. But if someone's searching shortest NBA players, they want to see like a list. Like that's the intent behind the search. So I think the broader conversation is, are you targeting topics that people are searching for and matching what they are looking for? So I'm always thinking about like the mind frame of my target audience. If they're searching for something, am I capturing the intent of that? Like, am I completely fulfilling what they want when they click to my website? Are they going to be satisfied with what they're seeing, what they're reading, how it's displayed on the site? And then like any follow-up questions they could possibly have, I try to answer those as well. So it's just about like matching the intent. But I think that still is kind of like the old school version of SEO, and that's quickly changing. So it's going to be more focused on topics and your audience. So like talking to your audience is probably the best thing you can do in today's world, because you're going to find topics to touch on that you're not going to find in a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or any keyword research tool out there, because that's all based on historical data versus like real time, what your audience is thinking about, what they're searching for, and what they're looking for. So it's going to become a lot more audience centric.
What do you mean? Could you like explain further like what you mean by talking to your audience?
Even outside of my newsletter, like if I'm working with a client, or in my full-time job, I work for a travel company that's global, and each region has different target markets. And like, so you might have older people in the US that want to use like a luxury travel brand versus young people in Australia that might be looking for like a discount or like a student travel deal. Those are two completely different intents. And if you spoke to them one-on-one, like we're talking now, you would probably uncover insights that you can't find anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself, but I think, you know, search is moving away from these tools, because at the end of the day, everyone can access ChatGPT. Everyone can access SEMrush. Anyone could pay a subscription to get tools that are going to tell them what people are searching for, but not everyone can talk to your specific customer or your specific reader or audience and get the data directly from them, and how they phrase things, what their pain points are, what their problems are, what they're running into, what they don't like about competitors, what you can do better than competitors, what you're not doing, where you're falling short. And all those things are really important for building a brand, building an audience and a customer base that trusts you and cares about you. And the way I think about it is, search could be that top of funnel, but then you want people like returning to your website. So if you're a publisher, you want that direct traffic. So if you look at a site like The Ringer, which is like one of my like idols, Bill Simmons, that I followed, you know, my whole life. That's kind of why I started a website. Their direct traffic is their biggest source of traffic. So they have readers that are loyal to them. They want to read what their writers are talking about, and they can write about whatever they want now because people are coming to their site no matter what. So I think, I wouldn't say it's a means to an end, but it's a way to capture that top of funnel audience through search or whatever channel you're using, build that trust with that audience, and then have them be a returning user in the future. So maybe they bookmark your site and they come back to it. Maybe they sign up for a subscription. Maybe they buy from you and they keep coming back over time.
You said you mentioned you worked for a travel company full time, taking a step away from like sports and like sports SEO. For these kinds of companies that are looking to like get into the game, or not just travel, but like, you know, just like general companies that maybe haven't been doing it and that they would probably benefit from getting into SEO, what are some things that like they shouldn't do? You know, like what is like a bad SEO sort of look like from your experience?
That's a great question. I've come across a lot of, I mean, not just, you know, like colleagues in the industry and conversations I'll come across in the little bubble of the SEO world on social media. I think a lot of companies make the mistake of looking at SEO as like free traffic. Google sends you this free magical traffic and it's just going to skyrocket your business. And for that reason, I just put out a tweet about this yesterday because it was in my head. If you have a channel that can drive 80% of the results you're looking for, why are you only investing 5% of your resources into that? So companies that make the mistake of looking at SEO as like this free traffic source and they take it for granted almost, and they say, what's the minimum I can invest in this to get results? I'm just going to do that. And then meanwhile, they'll put like 85% of their marketing budget into paid search. And, that faucet, you turn that faucet off, that traffic's gone. SEO is great because it compounds over time and you're making the website better for your users, your customers, your subscribers, whatever it is that you're in business of. Yeah, I think just treating SEO, treating organic search as its own marketing channel and dedicating the proper resources to it is going to pay dividends over time versus, not to say paid search or paid social is bad, but once you stop spending that dollar to make back $1.50 or whatever it is, that's completely gone. And there's also times where with attribution, you can say, okay, this person came from paid search. This person came from email. They converted from an email, right? But we don't know, like you can't track that full funnel attribution of saying this person discovered us in search, or maybe they even just saw our brand name in the search results, right? And they didn't even click to our website, but that put that seed in their mind of, okay, that's this company. I've heard of them. Then they come across, they talk to a friend offline. They're having a conversation. They hear that brand again. Then they search the brand again a week later, or they go home that night and they say, oh, I'm going to order pants from this brand that my friend just mentioned that I saw 2 weeks ago. They click on a paid search listing and then the paid search team is getting credit for that transaction. So there's a whole world of like everything connects, and search has just as much of a say in driving customers as all these other channels, but I don't think it gets the proper credit that it deserves. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think, but that's a whole other conversation.
So you're saying like in terms of brand awareness campaign as well, like that's another benefit is what you're saying?
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I think branded search is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits you can pick. So any client that I'll come across, the first thing will be, okay, what happens when I search their name? What does Google suggest? Like you'll oftentimes see like, is so-and-so worth it? Is this brand legit?
Yeah.
You'll
see like a Reddit
brand
post.
name alternatives. Exactly. You'll see these Reddit posts, these Quora posts, or these forums, these niche forums in the industry. And, they're completely like trashing whatever that brand is. And it's like, why is this brand overlooking that? Why are they not controlling the narrative? Yeah. Not to say in like a bad way, but like take control of your message, take control of your brand. Yeah. And that's probably one of the lowest hanging fruit you can pick in the world of search. Even if that's your only strategy and you stop after that, you just capture every brand search, you write about your brand, why it's better than alternatives, is it worth it? X, Y, and Z. I forget the brand name now off the top of my head, but I think it was Zendesk. It might be Zendesk Alternative. If you type in Zendesk Alternative, they created their own spin-off website that's like a brand, like a fake band. Mm-hmm. I think it's Zendesk.
Let me look
and if you type it in, it's like zendeskalternative.com and it'll be like linking back to Zendesk.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen companies do this.
It says it's one of the original Seattle alternative rock bands. So they basically like just said like, F you, like I'm going to take over this search. They rank number 1 organically. And it's like a fake made up band, but it says like brought to you by Zendesk, the actual brand. So it's like kind of like controlling the narrative in a funny way because they know people are searching for like alternatives to their brand. And, there's so many creative possibilities, like show me an AI bot that's going to come up with that idea,
Yeah.
Originally. So it's like, there is a level of creativity, and that's why I love SEO so much, is it's that blend of like the art of creativity versus like tying it with numbers and data and reporting. That's what I love so much about it, because there's so much that goes into it and you can have a lot of fun executing these strategies.
Yeah, you mentioned resources. People aren't allocating the right resources to SEO. Like break that down in detail. I know it depends like on a case by case budget and company size basis, but like at a high level, like what are those resources that they should be deploying in terms of, I guess, people to hire, or like what do you mean by resources? What should they be doing if you were to advise somebody?
So a lot of companies, I think, see SEO as like, okay, we're going to hire one person that's going to dictate all of these things. They're going to drive the strategy. They're going to drive the reporting. They're going to look at the analytics. They're going to control all our dashboards. They're going to write the content. They're going to build links to this content. They're going to do outreach. They're going to do PR. When in reality, like, you wouldn't treat any other channel that way. You would give them the proper resources because you know how much goes into it. And I think this is a failure of like communication by like the SEO industry as a whole, because most people in this industry just tend to like, kind of keep to themselves, and they want to just like execute, get results for their clients, like in the shadows. And it is one of those things where it's like, there's like a disconnect in understanding. And I think it's both the responsibility of like our industry and SEO, and also, marketing as a whole. Like, it's just kind of that disconnect between what actually goes into SEO, how are results driven, and what does it take to get those results. So, I mentioned like all these different responsibilities that are under the SEO, like as a whole, like even going into the CMS or whatever it is, like the back end of the website, and like correcting code, like all of this is expected to be done by one role in a lot of companies. And in reality, it's, coming from an engineering background, like there's so much that goes into it of, it takes multiple roles. It takes manpower, and at the very least, like an agency. And agencies have like a very poor reputation, especially of late. But at least like having the manpower and the brain power behind it, like you said, SEO is more than just like execution. There's a lot of like thinking of like strategy, like just spending time like thinking and brainstorming, because it's not about working on everything. It's about working on the right things. And sometimes it's about, I talked to a client recently of like, we're deciding not to pursue this avenue because the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like, if we're only going to get, 100 extra daily sessions out of this, or page views, or whatever it is, or customers, why would we prioritize this project when we can drive 1,000 daily, transactions through this method that we're currently working on? So it's about prioritization, it's about strategy, it's about execution, but all of those things take resources.
Yeah. How would you advise a company that is perfect for like, I guess, like doing SEO, but doesn't have the resources? Should you even try to do it? Like, is it just not like worth it?
I'm really glad you asked that question. A lot of times, and this comes from someone that I see as kind of like a mentor. His name is Eli Schwartz. He writes about, he's been in SEO for, like over a decade now. I think more than that. I probably got that wrong, but he wrote a book called Product-Led SEO. I'm currently reading it for the second time. And everything that he writes is just so good. Like, a lot of what I'm telling you is coming from his school of thought. He says, and I totally agree with this, and I've told clients this that come to me of like, we want to invest in SEO as a startup. Like, we need to grow fast. We need to prioritize growth, X, Y, and Z. And you just tell them like, SEO probably isn't going to be your best bet right now. Like, investing in, social paid advertising, like getting that product market fit and just like getting those first few customers through the door and hitting those growth metrics is going to be a lot easier to spend money to make money. SEO can take 6 to 12 months to really get any traction. And yes, you want your site to be like technically sound. You want it to be optimized for like the user journey, the customer journey. But oftentimes, like, these companies that want to grow fast and go from 0 to 1, it's probably not the best thing to start with SEO. Like, I did this completely backwards. Like, I just kind of fell into SEO for my own brand. But, for startups with funding and investors that want to see that rapid growth, it's probably not the best avenue at first. And obviously you want to tap into it later on. But if you need to be showing 100% growth every 6 months or every quarter, it's probably not going to be a realistic growth path for you at the start.
How are you thinking about running like experiments? You mentioned a bit about you doing like, testing and stuff like that. Is there a method to that you are following, like a process or a system that you're following when you're looking at like doing like A/B tests, or I guess just running like experiments in general?
Yeah, so that's something I do a lot in my day job. And it's mainly through like, there's companies that are specifically dedicated to A/B testing or SEO testing. So, they have a control and a variant. Obviously it's basically a science of, okay, if we remove this content block from the page on these 100 pages compared to the control group of these 100 pages, and assuming they're all in the same template. So if you just, for instance, are an e-commerce company with, hundreds of products, you would take this product batch and this product batch and say, okay, what happens if we add a navigation to the top that we sort by best selling? Which one is going to get more conversions, or even which one is just going to get more traffic in general? And you run that experiment for, say, 3 weeks before you see like what the results are. And a lot of these companies will just handle the reporting completely on their own of, here's what, when we reach statistical significance, here's what we recommend: sticking with this, rolling this out completely to the entire website, or scaling it back and just taking it down and sticking with, what is currently working for us. So, there's a whole, conversation around that, but it is really interesting to see hands-on data of like how very tiny changes can make dramatic differences, especially at scale in a business with, millions of pages on their website.
If you want to share like some of your like favorite tools, what tools you find value in that a beginner would use, and then if you could just talk about some of the stuff that maybe you use now might not be necessary, but like as you get more advanced, and what each of those tools like do. I guess like your favorite ones.
So I spent this whole conversation like trashing keyword tools and SEO tools, but I still use a lot of them in my business. So I'm just going to go through like my list of
Go ahead.
software costs. Beehive obviously is an amazing, email platform, newsletter platform that I use. Make.com is an alternative to tools like Zapier that just kind of automate tasks. I'm sure you're familiar with that. SEMrush, I have the pro plan with them. I probably don't make total use of that. SEMrush has become so much more than just an SEO tool. Like they're really broadening to, paid search, trends, influencer marketing and stuff, but I mainly use it for their SEO suite. So there's keyword research, there's competitor keyword gap, backlink gap analysis, where that sounds like jargon, like industry jargon, but like basically if you run a business and you have 3 competitors, you can say, okay, what are these 3 competitors ranking for that I'm not? You can find like kind of the gap between your strategy and theirs and try to fill those gaps, or maybe it'll generate ideas for you of like what to create in the future. So there's a lot of cool tools to just kind of get like data and valuable information about your site and your competitors' sites. I will say that one thing to watch out for is that their estimated traffic numbers like are not totally accurate. Like if you go in there for my website and you plug jokermag.com into their search bar, it tells you that I get like 3,000 sessions per month, which is like very, very off. And like underestimating, but also I've found cases where they overestimate. So you kind of have to take their data with a grain of salt, because it is third-party data. It's all estimated, annualized, and kind of broken down into like averages. Sitebulb, which is an audit tool. Another popular one is Screaming Frog. So if you want to do a technical analysis of a website, you can plug it into there and it'll spit out a bunch of like hints or like things that are wrong with the site. But then the human element of that is like, you can't just give a client, here's 100 things wrong with your website. And that's a common thing that I see in like a lot of SEOs is like, that's part of the disconnect is like, okay, here's your 100 problems that you need to solve. There's no prioritization, no thought. Like I'll ignore 80% of things that I see in an audit that's wrong if it's not going to move the needle forward for their business. So, if adding a meta description to 50 pages comes up on an audit as like high priority, it's not at all. Like that's something that an experienced SEO would know doesn't really matter. So that's another tool that I use. And then Bright Local is another like local SEO tool. So if I work with a local business, you can kind of plug in and just see how they're ranking in the local map pack of Google. So if you ever search like restaurants near me, you type in that search, it's going to look different than it is for me, that listing of businesses. So yeah, a lot of cool tools, but obviously it still takes that human element of prioritization and knowing what's important, what's not, what can be disregarded, and what should be taken into account. I didn't mention the AI stuff because I don't pay for anything, but you mentioned Perplexity. I've been using it a lot more often now, and I find it really helpful, even though it's rubbing a lot of publishers the wrong way in terms of like taking traffic away, but they're very super aggressive, and it is a valuable, helpful tool. I don't know that it'll ever take up a ton of market share into like compared to Google. Like I don't think Google will let that happen, but I like using it personally.